is the WrestleBread Podcast, bringing you the latest news, recaps, and analysis of AEW and WWE. Get the unique perspective from a wrestling fan of over 25 years. Here's your host, Jaydee.
What's going on, guys? This is Jaydee here, and this is episode 59 of the WrestleBread Podcast. So we have a lot of things to go over this episode. First off, I did watch the episode 5 on the Undertaker Last Ride, and I felt that he was going to retire. Of course, he does retire. And the interesting thing, and I had reacted to it, is that he never said the word, "I'm retiring." He said that right now he doesn't feel the need to get back in the ring. You know, he feels as though his time is done. But then he starts talking about, well, you know, never say never as far as, you know, another wrestling match. And if Vince calls him and says, you know, in case of emergency, break glass and bring back the Undertaker, you know, never say never. And I don't know. I felt it was coming. It is like, there is a part of me that is sad that he is retiring, but he never said, "I'm retiring," or he said words that saying like he doesn't have the desire to get back in the ring. You know, he is done and everything, but he never really said he's retiring from the ring. Now, WWE has went through with posting, you know, thank you, Undertaker, and they did a tribute show as well. I'm interested to see what happens once the fans are back, especially around Survivor Series time, where it marks 30 years of The Undertaker in WWE. And another interesting thing is that I didn't know is that the contract that The Undertaker signed, I believe was last year, was actually for 15 more years. So, of course, he won't be wrestling for the next 15 years, but I'm sure he will be a mentor, especially with NXT that we saw in episode 5, you know, doing maybe appearances, signings, things like that, as well. But it was I really liked the documentary. It got a look into the guy behind the persona, which we haven't really got to see for a very long time. And we saw snippets of it when he was, you know, American Badass, Biker Taker, Dead Man Walking, but we didn't really get the full scale of who he was, especially with his, like, lighter country bumpkin accent. But it was a very nicely done documentary. WWE really produces very nice documentaries, you know, video packages, things like that. But I really loved what they did with The Last Ride. I feel as though the Boneyard match, it really can't get that much better as far as the showing with Undertaker right now, because there was, even though, you know, what is he, like in his 50s now, but they did a lot of cutting and editing to make him look good during the match. And him wrestling again, truthfully, he runs the risk of feeling gassed out or getting hurt or concussed or something like that. And then he will start that whole cycle again of wanting to come back to prove himself, to put on a good match, something that he would be a lot happier with. I'm sad that he is done, but I completely understand. I don't want him to keep wrestling until the point where he, you know, is done due to, you know, an injury or something serious. I'd rather him go out, you know, on a high note. And so that, you know, for generations who didn't grow up watching The Undertaker could see him, be like, you know, that's a badass dude right there. So we'll see what happens as, you know, in the next couple of months. We'll see what happens at next year's WrestleMania. I'm very sure he will be put into the Hall of Fame. My friends over at Half K Wrestling Podcast, be sure to check them out. They did pose a question of if The Undertaker should go into the Hall of Fame by himself. Very similar to what they did with Andre the Giant back in the 90s, I believe. And I think it's a good idea because if they add anyone else, really, it would take away from everything. Not really take away from everything that The Undertaker has done, but with The Undertaker going in by himself, definitely concentrate on everything that he has done and everything that he contributed, not only to WWE, to wrestling as a whole. And I don't know. I definitely, if they add people to the Hall of Fame where The Undertaker would be inducted with, I think they should keep it a small amount of people, really. And just really, when it comes for, especially if the fans are there, they have to do it at a Hall of Fame where the fans are there. For him to be inducted and pretty much kind of do like a whole night of tribute to him, pretty much the whole weekend a tribute to him, because you're not going to find another person like The Undertaker. Let's be serious. That man kept up with the persona for almost 30 years. You know, people grew up thinking he was an undead wizard who controls lightning and fire and the lights. I told you guys the story about how when he disappeared back in 1994, I thought he was coming after my soul. I thought that, you know, he was Dr. Death himself. All the little mind games he played, I thought they were real when I was younger. So, and especially with the WrestleMania streak. Now, I don't know if we'll ever see it in our lifetime of someone else attempting to surpass that streak, but we won't. I mean, we probably won't see it in our lifetime. I don't think, unless, you know, whenever Vince passes WWE on to one of the kids, that they would attempt to do something like that, which I highly doubt, because that would be straight up disrespectful. But WWE has had instances in the past where they will do something slightly disrespectful. But I hope that the Undertaker streak will remain in the history books, and that there won't be ever a wrestler like The Undertaker. I really hope that once this is all over as far as COVID and people can interact again, that there will be like a signing or something like that where The Undertaker would be at, because I would definitely love to meet him. That is definitely one of my, you know, my top thing on my wrestling bucket list, to meet The Undertaker, get an autograph, whatever, tell him my story within, you know, the 15 seconds I have to talk to him, but definitely be able to meet him and shake his hand and just thank him for everything he has done, not only for my life, but for wrestling, period. So going into more with WWE, we have the next pay-per-view event on July 19th called Extreme Rules. And this year they're calling it Extreme Rules Horror Show. I didn't read exactly why. I don't really like that title. It's not October. I don't know why they're calling it a horror show, because they called it a horror show before the swamp match came about. So I don't know if they're going to like put cobwebs or something like that. But to me, Extreme Rules means extreme, like we're going like slightly towards ECW type matches. But I guess not. They did change the logo. And the colors of the logo definitely remind me of the Hardy Boys with the neon green and the purple. But the horror show aspect, I don't know. I don't really have high expectations for this pay-per-view because of that. So far, we have Braun Strowman versus Bray Wyatt in a swamp match. And Braun Strowman cut this promo on SmackDown. Was SmackDown or Raw? No, I think it was Raw, actually. And I don't know. It was very weird. It was good, but it was like cringy in a way. It's parts of the promo sounded like he was definitely reciting, because it wasn't like convincing as far as like the emotional aspect of it. You know, when a promo is good, the wrestler brings in an emotional aspect to it to make it feel realistic. Like that is something that a person will actually say, if that makes sense. But with Braun Strowman cutting that promo about Bray Wyatt, and then he did the laugh along with the Bray Wyatt laugh, and I don't know. So we're getting back the original Bray Wyatt. So I don't know what this means for the Firefly Funhouse. I don't know if we're done with the Fiend now, or is this Bray Wyatt just playing mind games with Braun Strowman? But I'm just hoping that this doesn't turn into another House of Horrors type of match. I'm hoping that, of course it'll be pre-taped. It'll be taped offset. They're going to try to recreate the Boneyard match like they did before in the Firefly Funhouse as well. But I'm just hoping that it makes sense, that it doesn't come out cheesy, which I'm sure it won't, but there is that small part of me that feel like it might turn out cheesy. But I hope I'm wrong, like I said. Also, big news coming out of WWE with COVID-19. There are a lot of, first we heard of people in the the Performance Center who tested positive for COVID. But now we are getting more prominent names who have been tested positive for COVID-19. First of all, Renee Young came out saying that she has been diagnosed with COVID-19. There's a rumor that WWE wasn't really happy about her coming out and saying it outright. But, it's her life, it's her diagnosis. I don't think that it's somewhere in the contract where she can't say that she has COVID-19. Plus, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that it's her, because in AEW, it has been announced that that Jon Moxley isn't wrestling due to, I don't know if they said COVID-19, so forgive me if they actually did, but I believe they said due to health reasons or medical reasons or something like that. So, 1 + 1 = 2, Jon Moxley, can't wrestle. So, and WWE is saying how people in their company has COVID-19. So far, we know that it's Renee Young. Kayla Braxton, Jamie Noble came out and said that that he has been, I don't think he definitely said he has COVID-19, but he made this statement where he doesn't really say he's been diagnosed with COVID-19, but yeah, he did. I think he asked for prayers for his family or something like that. But the rumors are that there is as much as 30 people in WWE who have been tested positive, which is alarming. It's very, very concerning, especially that they're continuing the tapings and everything. We finally see people in the audience wearing masks, which bravo to them. And then as far as with AEW, I don't know how many people in AEW has had it, because it hasn't been, I didn't read anything about it. But if your top champion is home because he is in contact with someone who has COVID-19 and more likely may have it himself, definitely concerning for AEW as well. So I didn't get a chance to read what both promotions are doing to prevent it, if they're taking people's temperatures or they're having people tested or whatever. But still, WWE is continuing on with their tapings. And so is AEW. Both promotions have their quote-unquote, special events. I mean, you can't really say pay-per-view, but they have their special events going on this week. Fyter Fest for AEW, and NXT announced that they have the Great American Bash coming for the same 2 weeks as AEW's Fyter Fest. So I say, okay, bring it on. They did release the demographics the viewership for both shows. And this is the last time that I'm going to talk about it, because both promotions aren't really winning. NXT won last week, quote unquote, with 786,000 viewers versus AEW with 633,000 viewers. And total, that's 1.3 million people. Still not good, the fact that this is all during quarantine. Well, somewhat of a quarantine now. With people still home, and neither promotions have hit 1 million like they did in their first week or two. So both promotions are losing. And I can tell you that I'm pretty sure within both of these numbers are people who are watching both promotions at the same time. So AEW or NXT fans can sit there and start, getting on about the ratings and who's winning and stuff like that, because neither promotion is winning. The wrestling is not winning right now because there was a whole quarantine. People had nowhere to go. There were no bars, no restaurant, no barbershops, no wine and spirits that people can leave out and go to on a Wednesday night instead of watching wrestling, especially with the whole, AEW is for the last fan or whatever they used to say. So last time we talk about these ratings because neither promotion is winning. So all that these promotions are doing now, and from the history that I've seen of how many viewers that each promotion had, especially during the quarantine, they're just trying to maintain their numbers. They're both going to range between, the 600s to the 800s, maybe to the 900s on a very, very good week. I'm sure both promotions' numbers may go up some because they have these special events going. But talk to me when they hit 1 million each, okay? Them doing these numbers, it's not really doing it. So going into this week's Fyter Fest, we have Private Party going against Santana and Ortiz, Jurassic Express going against MJF and Wardlow, Hikaru Shida versus Penelope Ford for the AEW Women's World Championship, Cody going against Jake Hager for the AEW TNT Championship, and Kenny Omega and Adam Page going against the Best Friends for the AEW World Tag Team Championship. On NXT side, we have, so we have Roderick Strong and Dexter Lumis for a strap match. Aliyah with Robert Stone versus Rhea Ripley. And Rhea Ripley must join the Robert Stone brand if she loses. Tegan Knox versus Dakota Kai versus Candice LeRae versus Mia Yim. It's an elimination match to crown a new #1 contender for the NXT Women's Championship. And then we have Sasha Banks versus Io Shirai in a non-title match. Oh, I forgot one more match. Oni Larkin versus Timothy Thatcher. So pretty good matches on both sides. The tag team matches for AEW, definitely. And the women's elimination match on NXT side, definitely. So that's for the first night. I'll talk about night 2 next week, as I don't think NXT released theirs. So we'll see what happens with that. Tessa Blanchard has been let go from Impact Wrestling. The story that I read is that she was supposed to send in a promo because she is their champion. She did not send in the promo. And they let her go. But apparently her contract expires June 30th. So they kind of let her go maybe, a week or two before her contract actually expires. She's been in hot water for a while because of the allegations against her, where she allegedly, it's been confirmed by the person who she did it to, but she said a racial slur and spat on someone. She's been accused of a lot of bullying backstage and everything. So people are talking about where she's going to go. Allegedly, WWE is looking into her. She has wrestled in WWE for the Mae Young tournament. So WWE may take her, put her into NXT probably, and we'll see what happens with that. Let's see. And finally, the biggest story to talk about is this whole speaking out movement that has occurred about 2 weeks ago. I wasn't on Twitter when it started. I hopped on Twitter during, I think it was SmackDown or something like that. Yeah, I hopped on Twitter as SmackDown was starting, and I saw it trending, and I started to look into, I saw the list of people who were accused, and just going through the stories, it's just heartbreaking what a lot of these women had went through. It's a very sensitive subject. It's, let me say this. The world sucks for a woman. It sucks for minorities as well, but it just sucks as for women, because there are instances where a woman is put into an uncomfortable position by someone of power, and they feel like they don't have a voice. They feel like they can't speak out, which is why that hashtag was named, and they feel like they're alone. And so when the first courageous woman decides to take a stand and say something, now I don't know who the first person was that actually spoke out and started the movement, but kudos to you. And what happens is once the first person speaks out, then another speaks out, and then another. So now we have, it happened with the Me Too movement, and now it's going on with Speaking Out. And there were people, I mean, the fact that we have numbers is very hard for people to sit there and say, oh, maybe she's lying, maybe it's not true, things like that. But once you get a number of people, especially multiple people speaking out against one person, it's kind of hard. It's a little bit harder to deny that, something isn't right with this. So here's a few people who have been accused. Apparently it's 70 wrestlers that were accused with over 100 incidents. Joey Ryan, I'm not a fan of Joey Ryan from the get-go. There were people who, kiss the ground he walk on. But anytime where you have a dick flip move, there's bound to be some type of story or some instance where someone isn't feeling comfortable. Especially, he definitely wrestled against a bunch of women. And I'm pretty sure that there had to have been someone feeling uncomfortable, wanting to have to wrestle with him, because you have to grab his penis and then flip yourself over. He has been terminated. I think it's Impact Wrestling he was with. He also had a promotion, from what I read, which he closed down due to it as well. Sammy Guevara has been accused. Now, what happened with Sammy Guevara, there was a podcast episode that came out 4 years ago, where he said that when he saw Sasha Banks, he wanted to rape her, which is not the greatest word to use. I don't care how old he was. You really don't say something like that. You can definitely say, oh my gosh, my eyes popped out, or my heart came out of my chest, or something like that, or I wanted to do a backflip. There's a lot of words in the English language that can replace, the phrase, I wanted to rape her. So Sammy Guevara came out. He spoke to Sasha Banks. They spoke privately. Sasha Banks came out with a statement, forgiving Sammy Guevara for what he said. Sammy Guevara also came out with a video, apologizing. He released a statement about it. He has been suspended without pay. He's going through sensitivity training, and his paycheck will be donated. I believe it's a women's charity in Jacksonville. I think for domestic violence or something like that. I'm not 100% sure. Jimmy Havoc has been accused of physical abuse against a former partner. He has been put through rehab or some type of therapy, and AEW said that they're going to come back and take a look at his contract when it's all over. Matt Riddle also has been accused as well. Apparently, this was an incident that happened years ago. I'm not sure if this is 100% true, but apparently WWE claimed that they had already investigated when he signed with them, and they didn't find anything or something like that. Jack Gallagher has been accused. He has actually been released by WWE. Interesting enough, Velveteen Dream for the second time has been accused of sending inappropriate pictures to minors and trying to put them in very uncomfortable situations. The first incident popped up on Reddit that's how I found out. And then we have a second incident that came out with the Speaking Out movement. I don't think Velveteen has said anything. WWE hasn't said anything, which is very interesting because we're taking action against other people, but we haven't said anything about this individual, which is a shame because the hashtag isn't trending anymore. And I'm hoping that if Velveteen Dream is definitely doing this, that they're not just sweeping this under the rug until this damn hashtag pops up again. Shikara, I think that's how you pronounce it, has been shut down. The owner, Mike Quackenbush, has been accused of sexual conduct. And after that, a lot of their wrestlers had terminated their contract with Shikara. And that's a promotion based out of Philadelphia. I've seen some of their shows. I've never seen it in person, but I caught a couple of their shows and matches and things like that. But the promotion has been shut down due to the owner and other wrestlers within the promotion have been accused of either sexual assault or sexual misconduct. This whole incident with Speaking Out, I commend the women who spoke out about it. It's very difficult to speak out about things that has happened. I'm not a wrestler, but as a woman, I had things happen to me. And this is the part of the podcast where things may get a little sad or dark, quote unquote. So if you get triggered by things, you can skip, this is pretty much the end of the podcast. So I will catch you next week. If you continue to listen, thank you so much for listening. As a woman, it's very messed up, the things that a woman goes through. I had when I was 15 or 16 years old, I forgot how old I was. I was walking to my brother's house. And this was back in the 90s where the way people dress was a lot more forgiving. We used to wear skirts, which is a skirt in the front. It looks like it's a skirt in the front, but it's actually a pair of shorts. And I was wearing that walking to my brother's house. This guy stops me. He had a very thick accent, like he was from Africa or something like that. He had a very thick African accent. And I thought he was asking me for directions, but I'm very hard of hearing, first of all. And if you talk too fast, I'm not going to catch what you're saying. And so I thought he was asking for directions. So I'm like, what? And so he goes into his wallet and then he pulls out a 20 and says, "I'll pay you for sex." And I immediately walked away. And luckily he didn't follow me or anything. It definitely could have took a wrong turn from there. In high school, I had a history teacher who liked me, and he would say things that would be borderline inappropriate. There was a time where he, I forgot I don't know exactly what he was trying to do, but his hand brushed on me, and he was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And it was just little things that he would do, during the most bold thing was during a parent-teacher conference. My mom is sitting next to me, talking to him and stuff like that. And he was telling her, how wonderful of a student I was. I cut his class a lot. I couldn't stand that motherfucker. So I cut his class. And I still walked out with a B because of his infatuation with me. But he would say how wonderful a student I was and things like that. And he said something, and my mom went to, I think she went to grab something out of her purse, and he looked at me and he winked at me. And I'm like, you bold motherfucker. Now, I didn't say anything about it because, like a lot of women, you have a fear of backlash. You don't know what's going to happen. You feel as though, like, you don't want to make the situation worse. You don't want to make the situation worse for yourself or for other people. I felt as though if I said something, they might believe him because he was a teacher there for a very long time. He may flunk me. And this was, I think I was a freshman at that time. I was either a freshman or a sophomore at this time. But yeah, I think I was a freshman. But he left the school eventually. So I didn't see him when I was a junior or senior. But I'm very sure I was a freshman then. Because I was very to myself during my freshman year. And so, I mean, there's other stories that I can tell, but this is for the women in the wrestling promotions. This is their time to speak up. And I'm glad that they did speak up because it is an unfair world for women. I mean, look at WWE where they had the bra and panties match. In order for you to get any type of attention with WWE back then, you had to pose on the cover of Playboy magazine. You had to, get big breasts. You had to wear, skimpy outfits and things like that. Like, you weren't looked at for how great you can wrestle. It was more of, how beautiful she is, her body, and things like that. I mean, there is a whole time of Jerry King Lawler yelling out puppies back then. So I'm glad that the women of today are very respected, that they are more on an equal level with the men, and that we don't have to go through the bra and panties match, and we don't have to go through, just the dumb crap. Thank you for listening to my story. Like, there's a lot more of what I went through, but I don't know. I don't feel like it's the time to talk about it, truthfully. Maybe one day I'll come out with my story, but I don't think it's the time right now for it, even though it technically is the right time, but I don't want to go into details about it. So, but thank you so much for listening. Thank you for your support. And that's it for the WrestleBread podcast. Thank you for listening. I'm going to try to come out on Tuesdays from now on. But the way my schedule works out at work and everything, I get home, I'm very tired. And so Fridays feel great, but it's a lot harder for people to listen to podcasts over the weekend than it is during the week, especially since we have, the Great American Bash coming this week and Fyter Fest and everything. So shout out to all my friends, Rob and Julian from the Wrestling Court podcast, and AlternativeMinds.com, Keita and Jay from the Keita J Show, Devin and Hafiz from Clark Street Wrestling. I already shouted out Half K podcast as well. Next week, I'm going to go over week 1 of the Fyter Fest and the Great American Bash, and what the week 2 of Fyter Fest and the Great American Bash as well. And whatever comes from, into this Extreme Rules horror show, which I don't have high expectations for, because what does a horror show have to do with the word extreme? I don't know. As a person from Philly with the ECW, I'm slightly triggered by that. So if I go into a rant about it, especially if it wasn't good, you know exactly why. So be sure to hop on Twitter. Follow me at Jaydee Talks. That's Jayde Talks. Follow the podcast as well at WrestleBread2. Leave a review. Let me know what you want to hear more of. And until next time, guys, peace.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to subscribe and leave a review. Check us out at WrestleBread.com and subscribe to WrestleBread on YouTube for more breaking news and JD's opinions.